Good afternoon, family, and welcome to episode 27 of the Critical Sense Making Sessions facilitated by yours truly, Revolutionary Rika. Today's topic is free thinking and spirituality. Today's guest is Saunyei Swindle. She is a San Francisco native. She is passionate about spreading and teaching love, raising consciousness and vibrations, and living holistically. Saunyei, tell us a little bit more about who you are and choose one word to describe how you're showing up.
Hi, thank you for having me. I am very grateful to be in this space today. Saunyei is the government. I go by Faye. If you look me up on any of my social medias, I'm Faye. And I decided to have this conversation with Rika because this was something that touched to me personally. And it's something that I'm constantly working on. This is pretty much the shoes that I'm feeling right now. It's just spirituality in this journey that I'm on. And I would just love to share it with you all. And one word I would say to describe myself or how I'm showing up would be open. I am going to be using that a lot, I guess, during our conversation. I don't think there's any other word right now that I think that better represents who I am and what I stand for right now is being open. I like being open to all possibilities. I'm like a sponge. I want to know it all. I want to be present. So open will definitely be the word to describe me.
All right. Well, thank you again for agreeing to be on the podcast. And we are looking forward to this conversation. So I'm going to push this right into our icebreaker question.
Mm-hmm.
In what ways did you grow and heal last year?
In which ways did I grow and heal last year? Whew. Let's just say last year was challenging for everybody. Okay, so I don't want to make this be an individualistic thing. The way that I grew last year, and let me say this, I was very blessed and fortunate that I was not affected at all by the pandemic. Okay. I have been in great health. My family has been in great health. I have a very secure job or career, if you will. I did not want or need for anything. Okay. So, in regards to healing, I was able to look at the world and where that led us, not only just dealing with the pandemic, but a lot of the political issues that were going on. There was a lot of divide, and it pretty much opened me up to God, we live in such a hateful world. Mm-hmm. And that started me, it was this catapult of me, I guess saying, you know what is my purpose? What am I here for? And I've already been on this journey. We'll talk about it a little bit more of healing. But I was like, you know what? I'm good, but I want to see how can I heal those around me? And it literally was transformational or transcendence, I guess, if you want to say. It was just one thing that kind of led to another. And it put me on this journey of that I wanted to be a healer. And when I finally figured that out, I was like, you know what? This is my niche. This is what I want to do. I don't know if people will get it, but I don't care. Like if somebody's going to be open to it, I'm going to give it to them. So I think to tie it in with the question is the healing wasn't for me this past year. I realized that there were a lot of others who needed healing. They needed that energy. They needed that positivity. They needed that little beacon of light. And I said, you know what? I think I'm on a mission to do this. So just opened my eyes pretty much to, I want to try to heal the world. I know that sounds cheesy, a little cliche, but I do. And I'm very passionate about that.
Oh, powerful response. I love it. Yeah, that is, I would say I probably had some similar epiphanies last year as well. And we just talked about our community as a resource. One of my business opportunities that's on the table for me to really community and empower community toward their purpose. So definitely we'll be linking up with you outside of the podcast to see how we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to move us into our first set of questions, and I would love for you to start just telling us a little bit about life growing up in San Francisco.
Oh goodness, San Francisco. You know what? I loved every bit about growing up in the city. Being an inner city kid, there was magic in it. Um, when I was growing up in the city, I didn't really appreciate it.
Mhm.
I didn't. It was just like, that's where you're from. When I look back at it, I'm like, God, I grew up in San Francisco. Like, how many people can say that they're born and raised in San Francisco? I grew up in the Western Addition, which we call Fillmore for those who don't know, or Fillmo, if you want to get technical about it. So yeah, I grew up in the Fillmore. I come from, I would say, a lower class family. We definitely had a middle or medium. We were on the low end, but I never needed or wanted for anything as well. My family we're from the projects pretty much, but it was still beautiful. It was a loving environment. Like I said, we didn't need for anything. Very communal, a sense of community, which I would say is pretty much dead now. That's a whole nother topic. We're not going to go there, but
Next
oh,
time, come on, we'll talk about that.
okay. The other thing about growing up in the Fillmore was I was exposed to a lot of different worlds, right? So you had like the low class, but you go 6 blocks and you're where all the rich people are. You in the Lower Pacific Heights, right? You go down 5 blocks another direction, you're at City Hall. You keep walking, you're downtown. And it was just like this melting pot, right? You had these different ethnicities, you had different cultures, there were social economic differences. We weren't isolated like some of the other places in San Francisco. To speak of, we briefly lived over in Hunters Point, they were kind of isolated over there, and I mean that with the utmost respect. We were not. We were like an epicenter, right? We were around everything. And there was just a plethora of things that we could get into. And it was beautiful. I loved growing up in the city. I almost wish that I never left, but unfortunately, my family did not own any property. They didn't own anything. So there was nothing that was left to pass down. When my grandmother passed away, she was living in a senior building, in a senior apartment. So when she left, that was it. I left out of the city, I think when I was like 18 or 19. And unfortunately, at this point in my life, I can't afford to go back. I'm hoping to make strides so that in the near future, I will be able to have a piece of property in my hometown. And I don't know, San Francisco always pulls at my heartstrings. I don't want to leave. I love it.
That's what's up. Thinking back on your childhood, how did you cultivate your spiritual practice?
Hmm. Well, I don't want to speak for the masses of us Black people, okay? But just like most of us, I grew up in a Christian home. I was not really able to cultivate or to do anything or to step outside of what I was taught to do, right? I was born into Christianity. I was born into my family wasn't super pious, but we were, how should I say, we were like holiday Christians, right? We will go to church on Easter and like on Christmas and stuff like that. Now, of course, we had to always bless our food or, give thanks. But it wasn't super strict. Like, get up, you go to Sunday school. Okay, you're going to church on these. It wasn't like that. But like I said, I was born into this family to where I didn't get to pick and choose. It was just kind of like I was told this is what to do. This is how to do it. I wasn't able to step outside of that until my teenage years. Yeah, I think I just started questioning a lot. Sometimes things, I'm not gonna say sometimes, a lot of it didn't make sense to me. And I would just start asking questions. And unfortunately, with religion or religion-based doctrines, like you cannot question it. It just kind of is what it is. And I questioned it all the time. And that didn't always work out for the best for me. Yeah, so it wasn't until in my teenage years when I started to kind of dabble into other things. And it for sure wasn't until I was an adult, until I stepped away and was like, you know what, I want to just learn everything on my own and figure out what where my place is.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. And so how was spirituality framed in your academic experiences?
Oh man. um, well, let's see. I was born into a Christian family, or Baptist. My family is Baptist. Then I don't know why, and I honestly don't know much about it, but my mom had me baptized Lutheran. So then I was in a Lutheran school for a little bit,
Mhm.
but then I ended up going to a Catholic school, and then I spent probably the better years of my childhood, adolescent to right before my teenage years, learning Catholicism.
Mm.
Um, like I said, I was a child, so I didn't get to pick and choose. I think my mother put me somewhere based on the education that she wanted me to have.
Mhm.
Um, but it's oddly enough, I actually kind of continued to go to private schools. So like later on in life, I ended up going to Holy Names University, where I graduated from there, with a bachelor's in psychology. And it was comfortable for me because that's what I knew, right? I would say Catholicism was probably the most comfortable for me because I spent so much time in it, right?
Mhm.
Going to school is like you're constantly talking about Jesus, you're constantly talking about Mary, you're constantly talking about the saints. Like we're going to mass, like we're praying during this time. We're doing so it was something I was accustomed to. I was used to, like I said, unlike being at home, we didn't have to practice it all the time. It was there, but we didn't have to practice. Did I answer the question? I know I tend to go off on a tangent sometimes. Yeah. But I think more than anything, my mother, and I do appreciate her doing that, was putting me into a private school because of the education. I think I appreciate it more so now than ever because that foundation was everything.
Mhm.
I don't know if I would be the same person that I am today without it, for sure.
Just a follow-up question. Do you feel like Catholic school was more rigorous than public school? If so, why or why not?
Well, I can't speak for early like grade school because I didn't go to public school until I was in high school. So from literally from preschool until the 8th grade, I was in a private school. I
Mhm.
didn't go to high school, excuse me, public school into high school, which was 9 through 12. And I say that here because we all know it's 9 through 12, but for instance, like my wife is from Canada and their high school is actually from 10 to 12. So just to clarify for people. So I can't speak from early on, but yes, it was very rigorous. First of all, it's a smaller setting, so you get that one-on-one attention, right? Versus when I went to public school, I was like, they don't notice if you're not in class. They don't notice if you didn't turn in the work.
Mhm.
Nobody's checking for me. And that was my downfall, actually.
Mhm.
When I went to high school, I wowed out, right? It was just like night and day. I was like, what? I can do all this. I have this freedom. Like nobody is checking in. Like I'm taking full advantage of it. And I did, I suffered greatly from that too, academically. But I think that there is a lot of structure in private school. And then you definitely get that one-on-one attention. Now, it's not for everybody, but I appreciate it enough to where I don't know if I necessarily want my child to go to Catholic school, but I would love for her to be in some kind of private environment, like for schooling.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your experiences. So I'm going to move us into our second set of questions. And that first question is, how has spirituality impacted your career choice?
This is a good one. Spirituality has not impacted my career choice. I think I don't really want it. Okay, I'm in law enforcement. Um, that is a whole nother subject. So I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole with law enforcement and what that's like. It's my job. It's not my identity.
Mhm.
Um, but I've been doing it for about 14 years now. Prior to that, I had just random jobs. It it has not impacted my life in a sense of me choosing the job that I
Mhm.
want because of my spirituality. I think I found myself in the midst of it, right? And now I'm actually making a I want to make a career move into a holistic, more spiritual kind of practice or lifestyle. And when I say practice, meaning owning a practice, being a practitioner. So with working, let me just say this, working in law enforcement, it has its ups and downs. For me, I love helping people. I think that I was placed on this planet to be a healer. You know, that is, it took me a while to figure that out. But then when I realized, I'm like, I'm always helping people. And I love it. It's like selfless. I don't get any like glorification for it. I don't get any, like, it doesn't make me, it makes me happy, but it makes me happy not because I feel like I should be, or I'm obligated, or I'm getting something in exchange, right? It's just like when someone's happy or when there is healing going on, there's a vibration or energy is in a room. Let's just put it like this. When you step into a room, you know when the energy is not right. Anybody can step into, even though you cannot see energy, even though you can't see, you can say, I don't know what energy is, I don't believe in it, whatever you want to call it, the spirit. I don't know, right? When you step into a room, you know, you say something's not right. My gut feeling, right? And that's the best way that I can explain it, is when the energy is high, when people are vibrating high, it feels good. It feels good naturally. And with working in this field, I'm surrounded by a lot of low vibrational, I don't like to say dark energy, but sometimes dark energy, right? I know that we are going through a very important social time right now with like policing and like law enforcement. And I agree to a certain extent, it definitely needs to be, people need to be checked. Let's say officers do need to be checked, right? People need to be held accountable for their actions. But at the same time, and I'm only speaking to this, let me just say to the people watching, I'm saying this because this is what I do for a living. Okay. So on the flip side of that, there are people who actually do care about people in the community. There are people like me who actually want to make a difference in the community, right? And it's not about just being punitive, but it's about holding people accountable for their actions. Everybody needs to be held accountable for their actions. And some people, guess what? They don't want to be held accountable. Some people, they don't want to change, right? I've had so many clients when I worked with the juveniles and when working with adults that are okay with victimizing people. They're okay with it. You know, they don't see, I didn't do anything wrong. Well, such and such did this. And it's just like, okay, but what was your part in that? You know what I'm saying? And you changed somebody's life forever. Some people are not going to be able to come back from that. And in the beginning, when I worked with with the kids, I worked with juveniles for probably the better part of my career. I would say the better, but the longest part of my career, I worked with the kids. And I loved it because kids are impressionable, right? With working with kids, there's something in it to where they listen. And even when they don't listen, you can find a way to get through it to listen because they haven't had that many life experiences. They're 15 years on this planet. They could have been through some rough and tough stuff and they feel like, this is it. I've seen it all. I've done it all. And it's like, honey, you have no idea, you know? Right. And it's like, but you have a story, but guess what? We all have a story. We've all experienced traumas. And guess what? Traumas look differently, but you can't take that away from somebody, right? Just because yours was different than mine doesn't mean that it's a higher or less degree of trauma. Trauma is trauma, right? So with working with, like I said, a low vibrational energy, and this is just not dealing with the clients, because half the time I actually enjoy working with my clients because I'm able to speak to them and I'm actually to see them, not only just hold them accountable, but they're like, you see me, you listen to me, you hear me. And sometimes that's all they need, right? Yeah, I'm going to listen, but I'm firm and I'm fair. I'm going to listen, but I'm going to help you. Let's move past this. Guess what? The past is the past. We can't move. We cannot get stuck here. And I always tell my clients that you can't get stuck here. You got to find a way to move forward. You got to make peace with the past. You got to make peace with what you've done. You got to make peace with whatever you felt the reason why you did it, or what the other person, blaming the other person for. You got to move past that. And I love that part of the work. But I mean, I do have superiors, right? I do have the management administrations. And sometimes you don't necessarily agree with their practices. You don't agree with what they want to do. And we're moving in a time right now where Unfortunately, people who victimize others are not being held accountable. They're like, free little Jesse. And it's like, well, little Jesse had a gun up to 5 people's heads.
Right.
But you want to free him? Right? Okay. No, that's not okay. Like, they need to be held accountable. So working in this field has definitely, it's like every time I drive to work, unfortunately, it's like I have to dim the light. I got to turn it down a little bit. Right. It's like if this candle is burning and I have to extinguish it and then relight it at the end of the day. And it's exhausting. I mean, I am a light worker and I finally figured that out. And I'm like, I don't want to really necessarily move in this space anymore. So I'm focusing on my exit, slowly but surely. You know, I think dealing with the negative energy or the low vibrational energy has impacted me to want to make a career change.
Yes. Well, you preaching to the choir, especially around that trauma, because my whole family says now that, that's my word. And so I think as I'm doing my studies, I look at, okay, how can schools actually help young people acknowledge, address, manage, and heal from the trauma earlier on? Teach these strategies as they're moving through the school system, because once they get there, they accumulate more trauma based on the culture of hostility that exists in our schools toward youth of color. And so, not to say that kids, young people don't know right from wrong, but if I grew up in a family, and this is getting back to the spirituality, if I grew up in a family and all I've seen around me was everybody react to situations and respond in a violent manner, then more than likely I'm gonna take on those traits because that's what I've been raised around, right? And so I think it's, and I'm gonna give it back to you, but this is just making me think of the scripture: train up a child in the way that they should go, and when they get old, they won't depart from it. That goes both ways. If you training them up with morals and values, or if you training them up with no morals and values, right? And so I think when you said that to me, I do think accountability is important, because I don't think people should go around harming other people. Like I don't know if you watch the news, but they attacked the Asian man just walking down the street.
Oh God, I saw that. Yeah.
Okay, I don't come from that, and I would never celebrate that. That is disgusting.
Yeah.
And even looking at Mayor Breed's response to that, which we all are, our grandmothers grew up in this, was in the same church, your grandmother, her grandmother, and mine, and just thinking about some of the good things that came out of experience, out of those experiences, just what they taught us around, treating people like you want to be treated, and some of those lessons. But I think that the schools have failed in a sense that they haven't did their part on, if every kid is coming to school with some level of trauma, we trying to address the trauma. Why aren't we working with mental health providers? But that's for another day, because we're gonna have a trauma conversation.
Well, I am all for it, especially, listen, I love the questions, but I love the dialogue too. So let me just touch base back on what you just said about the healing in the family and not addressing those kids and their trauma. See, the other part of this is that, and I dealt a lot of this with dealing with the juveniles, right? That were on probation. They come into custody, you deal with them, they get intensive treatment, they get all of these things. And then guess what? They got to be released. Where are they going? They're going back to the same environment. So this is what I'm talking about with healing. This cannot just be just for the individual, right? It has to be for everybody. You can't take one person that has moved past trauma, that has done the work, and not that they can help it, but think about a child. Think about their brain is still developing. Think about the life experiences that they've had. They're not even able to articulate those things, right? Or even to be able to effectively communicate with how to teach someone else to how to do that. Not saying that it's impossible, but most of them don't. So if you don't work with the family, then guess what? The cycle is going to continue.
Yes.
So I am definitely up for that discussion one day. I am here for that for sure.
Maybe our little group can get on and discuss that. Me, you, Lavette, and Dom, and Carm, and Free.
Let's do that. Yeah. That should definitely be a session for sure.
Absolutely. So my next statement is, if you can define free thought viewers.
Okay, so free thought or like a free thinker is someone who is like non-conforming, right? They challenge thoughts, like they formulate their own opinions about things, they question everything. They may be skeptical about belief systems. They may even reject social constructs or even like religious dogmas. So, I mean, pretty much that's it. It is the word itself, free thought or free thinker. You think freely. You're not confined to any belief system. You can move fluidly.
Mhm. Thank you. And so how has free thinking influenced your life?
um let's just say that I think innately I am a free thinker. I think I was born a free thinker. I came out like, what is this? I didn't realize or I didn't understand that there was actually a label associated to it until later. Okay. So a lot of these things that I practice now or that I believe in now, I did not know that there were groups of people or there was a title or a label for something. I just knew there was something different about me. I knew that I always like to challenge stuff. For instance, when I was in grade school, like I said, I was in Catholic school and we would do the rosary or you want to pray to Mother Mary. And I told my grandma, she's like, nope, don't do none of that. Nope, that's a false god. You can't worship other gods. Only God is who you worship. And I was so confused, and I'm like, but why? Or even with just listening to the scripture, and it's just like, Jesus walked on water, and you're like, well, how? Or like he turned water into wine. And you like, how? And it's not that I was being, disrespectful or blasphemous, but I was just an inquisitive kid. I'm like, there has to be an answer for something. I'm not like, what would you say, science-based or science belief, because I know that there are things that exist that you cannot see, right? We know electricity exists. We can't see it. Right. But when you plug something to the wall, chances are it's going to turn on if it's grounded and if it's working properly. Right. Yeah. So, but as a child, I couldn't grasp that. So I wouldn't say that I was influenced by it. I know innately this is just who I am. Like I said, it wasn't until later on in life with me just looking or researching or stumbling across or finding other people who I connected with. And I'm like, oh, this is what this is called. But let me just say this, for the sake of conversation, for people to get an understanding, because there's a definition. Sometimes people they need something tangible, right? They need something to make sense. How can I wrap my head around this? I do not like labels. I do consider myself spiritual. I am a free thinker, but I'm not a free thinker meaning like put me in the box and this is who I am. Okay. I just think freely. And there was no other way to explain it than being like, I am a free thinker, but I don't practice that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing. And then the last question in that set is, how have you challenged religious dogma in your life?
Ooh, you came with it with that one. Okay. I'm gonna be very honest. I didn't challenge it. I didn't. Growing up, besides me just being an inquisitive kid, like there are some people in my family that are pious. Like I have some aunts and like some uncles who are. And I just learned from early on that you can't challenge some certain things with some people. Mm-hmm. What they believe in is what's true, and that is it, and that is it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not here to change anybody's mind. Right. Even me today, with me being a spiritual person in what I practice and what I believe, it is so far-fetched for the masses, but I'm okay in my shoes. But I'm also not here to change anybody's mind. I am not trying to convert. And let me say this to everybody. I am not here to convert anybody. Mm-hmm. I am not here for you to leave what you believe in or you to abandon your practices. I am not here for any of that. I just speak my truth. And if you can get on board, then cool. If you want to have a dialogue about it, cool. If you feel it and you want to powwow, I'm cool with that too. But the majority of my life, I have been avoidant, just because I don't like conflict. Mm-hmm. The newer me definitely does not like conflict. The younger me would have wanted to fight somebody, right? I'm not here for that. I'm not here for it. And I think too, with dogmas, is interesting. I find it so interesting. I'm like, why do people believe what they believe in? And actually, I can go down a rabbit hole with it. So this is a little off kilter, but I stumbled across what do they call FDLS? They are fundamentalists from Latter-day Saints. Okay, they are Mormons. And there's a show that I saw, and it was about this group of people who live. They're based in Salt Lake City, right? It's a lot of Mormons there, but they're based there. And these are like the people who they dress as though they are. I don't know what you call it, very modest, right? Mm-hmm. So all the women only wear dresses and shoes. They don't wear pants. They only wear specific colors. They wear their hair, what they call the wave. It's kind of like flipped over and it's maybe back in like a braid, but it's really long. And I was just so fascinated with this group of people. And they are extreme in a sense, and I mean this by no disrespect. So when I speak about someone's religion or their culture, I don't mean any disrespect. Let me just put that out there. This is based on my observations. But from watching it, it was either in or out. There was no in between. You can't move fluid. You can't say, well, today I'm going to do this and tomorrow I'm going to do this. No, you either in it or you not. But I also find it interesting because with them, it's like you're born into it. Right? I can't just be like, oh, I met this guy or this woman and I want to get married to them and I'm going to join their group. You can't, right? Like they are who they are and they only marry or only procreate with those from within. And I just find it so fascinating how some people, like, they just choose that way of living. And sometimes you can see just watching the show, what is the name of the show? I can't even think of what the name of the show. Oh, it's Escaping Polygamy. So there was this young, and I'm gonna just tap briefly about it, but this young woman, she was in one of those groups. They weren't as strict with like the clothing or whatnot, but she was married to like her uncle or something like that. And I know it goes deep where they marry like their uncles, their cousins. I think they just don't do their siblings. And she was getting abused. She hated, she ran away, she left it. So she made her mission in life is to help people escape that no longer want to be part of their religion. And these people are like, when I say they are ostracized, they are outcasted. They are like, if you leave, you can never come back. They have a word, I think they call them apostates. Like once you leave, you are rejected. You can't get into the kingdom of heaven once you leave. That's their belief, right? And my thing is I'm not here to listen, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. I am not here to steer anybody away from that, right? But I know where I am. And like I said, I'm always willing to have that conversation. And I think with any culture, with any religion, it's respect. You have to find respect. And I think with being somewhat of a free, I wouldn't say somewhat, but like a free thinker, is you find the beauty and the respect in it, right? I respect what everybody believes in. I mean, people are like, well, I can't get down with the Satanists. Well, why not? Why not? You know, I've met some beautiful people who worship the devil. And it may not be for everybody. And guess what? It's not for me. I don't worship the devil. But they were a kind, gentle soul. And people will be like, well, how can they be kind and gentle when they worship the devil? Well, let me ask you this. There's a lot of people who are Christian that persecute others. There are people right now that'll kill somebody in the name of Jesus. There's somebody that'll kill somebody in the name of Islam, right? So it's just like, who are you to say that one person is worse because of what they believe in or who they believe in or whatever deity they worship, right? It's just about finding this respect. And that's what I'm on a mission to do. Like, seriously, is find a middle ground for people to have respect and to know that it doesn't matter what you believe in, but love moves all.
Mhm.
Love and healing. Once you find that love and that healing, you can respect everybody. Like it moves all. So that is my great mission. I know that was a little long-winded.
Okay. I like that because I hear you and I feel the same way about checking. It's about assessing where people's hearts is. People say a lot with words and they can tell you a bunch of things and can manipulate you with words. But when they
Yeah.
heart not right, like you said about that energy and that when you step into those rooms and they vibration, that lets you know where the heart is right there, how they reacting and interacting with people, right? So I thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, that was thank you. I'm moving to our third set of questions.
Okay.
First question is how can one learn more about the free thought movement?
Hmm. Well, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a movement. I don't like call it a movement, but let's just say I've noticed a lot of influencers or people who maybe not even influencers, let's say the Black community that are tapping into this free thought and this spiritual side to where they're like, I don't want to say denouncing Christianity. And I say Christianity because the majority of us were Christians, right? Um, Going back to slavery, let's just say that, right? And once we were here, we were stripped of everything. We were stripped of our identity. We were stripped of our culture. We were stripped of our spiritual beliefs and practices. We were taught that everything about that was evil and ugly and of the devil, right? It was beat into us that anything outside of Christ was wrong. Any of those deities that we worshipped when we were back in the motherland was wrong. Practicing voodoo. If I ask you right now what you think of voodoo, let me ask you, Freak. What do you think of voodoo?
I'm interviewing. You ain't interviewing. Finish your thought.
No, but seriously. So, and this is just like I said, I don't practice voodoo, okay? But what I'm saying is we were stripped of everything,
Mhm.
okay? And it was always taught and it was beaten to us to forget about it. And we forgot who we were and we lost that. We
Mhm.
lost all of that. We don't know who we worship. We don't know who we pray to. We say Jesus, but Jesus in God and Christianity was what we adopted from being slaves. Our masters taught us that's what you must, that's what you will. You will abide by that. You will worship this God. They weren't worshiping that God back in Africa. We weren't, and I now see a lot of people who, and this is no disrespect to Christians. Let me step back. This is no disrespect to any of you. Okay. But I'm starting to see people now step away from that and getting back to the root of who they are, looking into, okay, where did my people come from? Because we really don't know where we came from unless you're like first, second generation and you still got a direct lineage or connection to Africa. We don't know where we came from. They say the West Part. How many countries are on the West Part? We don't know. Right. But all of that was left behind. And when I'm seeing these people now starting to, I don't want to say look the part, but dress the part, but embody their Blackness, embody who they are, and saying, you know what, I am going to, I don't want to say denounce, but yes, I'm going to start to look into this other side of who I may be or who I want to be or what I thought we might have been. And I guess in a sense that is a movement. I don't like to call it a movement. But I think too, right now, education is the best that it can be in the sense that you don't have to go to a traditional school, right? You can find anything online. I say if you want to learn more about it, spirituality, free thinker, any of that culture, Google it.
Mhm.
Google University. We got YouTube University. You can learn to build a car from scratch on YouTube. Shoot, I might do it this weekend. Like seriously. So I say just the sky's the limit right now. We didn't have this. Even when I was a kid, you had to go back to the library, right? Pull a catalog card, look for the book. Remember that? Get the stamp, make sure you bring it back on time, right? Now, you don't have to do that now. We have full access to everything. Just pick one click away on your computer, your iPad, your phone. So if you want to learn more about it, I say just research it. You might find one thing that you like about it, and then you're like, cool. And that's pretty much that's what I do. I stumble across something. I might even find a word that I don't know. Google the word. And I'm like, oh, well, let me look more into this. Oh, there's a community on Instagram. Oh, well, let me look at this. And it's not that I want to be a part of it, but like I said, I'm a sponge. I'm always open. I'm always willing to learn. And I think that everybody take some time to do that. Just take the time. You don't have to look up Freethinker, and it's not gonna hurt my feelings either way. But for sure, if you are interested in it, I say just Google it.
All right. Well, thank you. What are ways that free thinking can improve outcomes for the Black community?
I think I just kind of touched on that in that last question a little bit. Ways that it can improve. I let's just say I'm a very neutral person. And I don't want to say neutral because it's easy to be safe. No, because I can be far from safe sometimes. But I think as Black people, it is very important for us to remember where we came from. I think as Black people, we have not asked any questions. And when I say Black people, I'm talking about we Black people in America, the people who have a direct bloodline from somebody who was on one of those slave ships. Okay. We have to start asking questions. We can't just take the truth for what we think that the truth is, or we were told what the truth is. See, all of us, our truth is something that we were told. I mean, I guess it kind of works like that across the board anyway, but why not look into it? Right? Why not start to think it? This is the cool thing about religion too. If you put all religions next to each other, there are stories that are so similar to each other. I mean, almost exact, right? To where they have like some kind of person that's like the Jesus or a Messiah or like a Buddha or something. And it's just like, they all kind of have the same storyline. Well, where did this come from? What people put this doctrine together to where they all pretty much have the same storyline? You just have to start asking questions, and I think it is very important as Black people to do that, because we don't ask questions. We are either afraid or we're so caught up in no, this is right and I know it's right and there's nothing, this is what it is. Well, what if it's not? And you know what it is right now, it may not have been what it was 10 years ago. Or it may not even be what it's going to be 5 years from now, right? You're constantly changing. You have to constantly evolve. Like, stuff just doesn't stay the same. And then this is another good point too. In this example, in my philosophy class back when I was in college, my professor said, there's a saying, if you see Buddha on the side of the road, kill him. And I was like, what does that mean? Right. And when he starts talking about it, I'm like, oh my God, this makes sense. He's like, sometimes people have such hardcore beliefs that if it's challenged, they can't move outside of that. Mm-hmm. So for instance, if somebody came knocking on your door right now and said, I'm Jesus, what you gonna do? What you gonna do?
Close the door.
But you see what I'm saying? Because it's like, well, what if it really is? What if that was your moment and that really is Jesus, right? You believe that, okay, one day he's coming back. They said he's coming back. And maybe he came back to you because you're supposed to be the one that's helping to do whatever. But it's like, that's why I say, you see Jesus Buddha on the side of the road, kill him. Because guess what? If Jesus comes back, I guarantee they're going to kill him again. Because somebody's going to say, I'm Jesus. And they're going to be like, dude, you're not Jesus. Well, how do you know that? And that's what I'm saying about that thought process. You got to keep asking questions. You can't get stuck in just this box that what you believe and what makes sense to you is all that it is that exists, because it's constantly moving. It's just like energy is free flowing. Things are constantly moving. Things are constantly changing. You can't just, and I keep saying getting stuck, but there's no better way to express that than being stuck. Now, like I said from the beginning, what I believe in, a lot of people might be like, this is too far-fetched, she crazy, I'm not watching this. Okay. And I'm okay with that. Like I said, I'm not here to change anybody's mind, but that's what it is being a free thinker. Start asking questions, start challenge thought. This page is perfect. Critical sense making, that's critical thinking. Critical thinking is thinking outside of the box. right? It's not being this one linear thing. No, you know, there's a spectrum. And what does that look like? Right. And then when you start putting your thoughts with someone else's, okay, it may be on the opposite end. Y'all might be right together in the middle. Y'all might be closer to the left or closer to the right. I mean, who knows? But I think it is very important for us to start asking questions, not just about spirituality, in general.
Mhm.
In general, start asking questions. I know I was just real passionate about that, huh?
No, that was good. I thought it was good. I think it is. I think that is I think being a trained historian, I've learned to ask questions. I've learned to be inquisitive. I've learned to um, challenge things that were um, instilled in me that was supposed to be this is how it is. But at the same time, I think from my own
Mhm.
experience, just learning now how to cultivate my spiritual practice, not religious practice, my spiritual practice, my building up my spirit man. And so doing, while I still believe in a lot of things that I believed before, now it's just I practice it in a different way. Like I don't think that following church rules and traditions is that's of man, right? So like a lot of that stuff that I picked up early on, I may not do some of that stuff, or I'm pushing back on
Mhm.
just certain things that they tell you to do related to like Old Testament habits or stuff like that. That I'm like, we're not the Jews, so why are you asking me to keep some laws that don't apply to me, right? Those rules weren't for me. And so just challenging in those ways, but
Right.
definitely still grounded in my spirituality in a way that I know, you know, I know what I believe, but at the same time, I'm open to have conversations like these just to like stretch my thinking a little more, just to get me thinking about, okay, so let me, even if I believe that, why do I believe that? Right. And so starting to have those conversations a lot more in the last 5, 6 years.
Nope. And I mean, I think that that's important for all of us,
Mhm.
right? And like I said, in challenge thought in everything, not just religion. Like we have to start asking questions. You
Exactly.
know,
Even how, even the way that the makeup of our family and the way that we do things and the way that these traditions have been passed down in families and, the way that we, just for Black family likes to sweep things under the rug. I remember my grandma used to say, you keep sweeping things under the rug, it's going to bust. So
right,
you got to get them out and deal with them because that trauma that we talked about earlier gets trapped in our bodies. And a lot
right.
of times we forget
Hmm.
about it, but then it comes out when it's triggered. And so we react in these ways that sometimes are harmful to ourselves and sometimes harmful to others. And in some cases, people is like, okay, I'm not forgiving you. I'm done with you, right? And so now you done destroyed a relationship because you failed to acknowledge and heal and manage that trauma.
Right. And not only with that, there's been various studies that shown too with stress response and how it actually changes your DNA and how it can be passed down. Right. So I know that
Traumatic slave syndrome.
there you go.
Yep,
Seriously.
yep.
Mhm.
Intergenerational trauma, historical trauma. Oh, I've been doing so much research on that and how a lot of the behaviors that we learned from slavery, a lot around being one, sexual behaviors, because
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
behaviors, they want to say that African Americans is violent, but y'all beat on them from the time they came until it and still continue to this day. We saw George Floyd and all the rest of the people, right? So I definitely, yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
How to challenge it. Okay, so the last question and the third set is, in your opinion, what are the benefits of a spiritual awakening?
Mm. Um, let's see. So is this okay? Answer it kind of in two parts. The benefit, I would think for others, obviously, would be for your own enlightenment, right? There, there's so much that has not been tapped in, like with the human mind, even just within ourselves. You know, like I said, sometimes you get in that bubble And you're like, this is like the 15-year-old kids. I'm saying, oh, this is all I know I've experienced. And I'm like, honey, you have no idea. Right. And it's the spiritual awakening, and just that journey is crazy. And if you have, I just learned a new terminology recently from a friend. And then it's funny because now I keep seeing it in different things that I watch and I read. It's called the long, dark night of the soul. And it's pretty much when you are not challenging, but you are questioning just life itself, your spirituality, like dogmas, just everything. It's just, I don't know if it's a certain point, like your Saturn's return, like when you get a certain age, or you call it like a midlife crisis or something like that. But you get to this point or something happens and it's a trigger, and then all of a sudden it's just like, right? It comes on like a ton of bricks. But everybody's journey is different. Everybody's journey looks different. We all have different experiences. It is not something that's across the board, like, okay, I'm going to put it in a book, follow these steps, and this is it. No, it doesn't happen like that, right? But the benefits of it is when you find or you have that awakening, you're able to view the world differently. You're able to have these conversations, right? I am able to have this conversation and I'm not taking it personal, right? But because I know that some people haven't had that awakening yet, I have to give that disclaimer. I mean, no disrespect, right? I have to give that disclaimer because some people are going to take offense to that.
Yeah.
Some people will. And until you have that moment or that time, because it may not just be like this one moment kind of thing, it's ongoing. Mine has been going on for, I would say, for about 2.5, maybe almost 3 years now. But when I first kind of fell into it, it was almost by accident. So my wife, I was going through this really challenging time in my job, and it was so stressful. I had so much stuff going on in my life. My brother was killed, then my cousin got killed, and this was 6 months apart. I was in grad school. I was starting this new job. We were planning a wedding. I was so overwhelmed. And with us being Black people, and I hate to say this, but we as Black people, especially Black women, sometimes we are taught to, you're strong. What would they say? Oh, you strong. Oh, you can handle it. Oh, no, I can't. I can't always handle that. And guess what? I get weak sometimes and I get emotional and I want someone to check on me and I want someone to ask me how I'm doing. I can't always be the strong person. Yeah. So I was going through this really challenging time in my life, and it manifested through my job because the job was like the candle that got blew out on the cake. I was having anxiety. I was having panic attacks all the time. I was like ready to jump out of my skin. I was like, what's going on? But how this trauma that I wasn't dealing with on top of all my life trauma that's happened that I really hadn't dealt with. But it was just like, it was too much for me. So I was just like, babe, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I was like, I want to quit this job. I want to do this. And she was just like, have you ever heard of The Secret? And I was like, no, I haven't. I'm like, well, what is it? She was like, well, I want you to watch it and I want you to be open to it. Now she knows that I'm already open. Right. But I said, okay, I'll watch it. And when I watched it, it changed my life. Now, if any of you are interested in it, it is on, and I'm not affiliated. Okay. So I'm not getting any perks for this, but it might still be on there. It's on Netflix. It's called The Secret. And it's about the law of attraction. And pretty much with the law of attraction, if you all don't know, have never heard of it, is pretty much what you put out in the universe will come back to you. Doesn't matter if it's positive, doesn't matter if it's negative, whatever you think it shall become, right? So I shift my way of thinking because I was going through so much stuff. I become a victim of my circumstance. And I was just like, woe is me. Why is this? Why is this? I had to do it. I said, I don't have any how my supervisor is or what she says, but one thing I do have control over is how I respond to the situation. And it was like, bing, light bulb clicked, right? I have control over how I react to something. That's what I do have control. And once I figured that out, oh my goodness, I got so into the law of attraction. I kind of shifted away from what I call like mindless stuff, like mindless TV, mindless, or what I call trashy TV, or, you know, stuff, just idle time where I wasn't doing anything. I started educating myself. I started listening to podcasts, but things that were inspirational, motivational, stuff that was going to help me, working on fixing, like my credit, for instance, right? Things that I had not been taught. For instance, let's use credit as a preferable example. I hadn't been taught about that as a child, right? So it was all just trial and error. And when I messed that up, I didn't have anybody to show me how to clean it up. So what did I start doing? I started learning about that. I started learning about investments. I started learning about just all of that, right? And it just changed my outlook. And I was like, goodness, I really like this. It didn't start snowballing deeper until later, right? But that's where my awakening happened, was with the law of attraction. The benefits for me is it has been so life-changing. It has changed relationships that I've had. It helped me to be able to close doors and sever ties. You know, I'm not codependent, but just relationships that weren't serving me, right? I felt that I needed to keep them. Just bad habits, just all kind of things. It's helped me to be a better partner. It's helped me to be a great mother. And even how I show up in my work, you know, how I show up at my job, and just being present and giving my all that I can to my clients until I decide to leave out of there, you know. So the spiritual awakening or the enlightenment is beneficial when you are ready to go on that journey. And sometimes it happens unknowingly. You don't even plan on it. Like I said, I didn't plan on it, and it just drops in your lap, you know. But then it's up to you to take that next step. That's why I say you have to remain open, because Krista just say, you want to watch The Secret? And I'm like, what is that? I'm not watching that. I'm mad. I want to stay mad, right?
Yeah.
I was open.
I love that. I'll have to confess, 2015 was my year that it started to happen for me. I just had a lot of big things were taken away from me, like just people in that time. And it was just like I was walking through a cloud, but I was showing up doing work, and everybody was like, "Oh, you're doing such a great job." And I'm kind of like, "What did I do?" I don't even recall what happened in 2015 for the most part, because I wasn't involved. But what it showed me was I was living. Ooh, I was living wrong. Even though people like you weren't living wrong, but I'm like, yeah, I was. And he had to take some things away from me to show me that. And so I like to adopt one of my professors, Dr. G, always talks about becoming. And that idea of, you know, being, oh, I'm set, I know who I am. You actually are always growing. With each experience, you're growing in your thinking, you're growing in all these different ways. And so once I saw that, that's when I started to say, okay, I want to shift the way I practice. I cultivate my religious practice, or my spiritual practice, I should say, because I moved away from calling it religion. I moved away from those labels and those terms of Christianity and some of those things, because I was like, if you read the Bible, it don't say it. Christianity is not in there. It don't say Christianity. So that's something that they created to control, right? But then learning how to discern what to take away from conversations and what I don't need, right? Because some of it,
Right.
every interaction, you're going to learn something. There's a
Right.
purpose, the meaning on why you interact. Even on a daily basis, somebody you may run into for 1 or 2 minutes and you have small talk. There's something they're supposed to get from you. There's something you're supposed to bring to them. And so hearing you talk about that, I was just like learning how to be present and engaged in each moment, so that I know, okay, let me see, what am I supposed to get from this person? I don't want to
Right.
walk away and I don't get what I need. And then the other thing I wanted to just point out was when you talked about mindless TV and all that. So your diet is like more than the food that you eat. It's what
Yeah.
you listen to, what you read, the people you hang around, and starting to just cut off the stuff that's no longer needed. And a lot of times we're comfortable with people because we've known them for a long time.
Yeah.
We really assess that when I'm around this person, I notice this kind of energy is happening, and I'm leaning toward these ways that I've grown from, but I start to go back into those habits. It's like, just for instance, you may end up gossiping or something that I'm like, I really don't even care about what's happening on Facebook. So why am
Yeah.
I sitting up here spending 20 and 30 minutes talking about that? So
Right.
just starting to shift the way that I engage with people so that it's always that, like you said, what you put out, putting out a positive, something positive, building up, not tearing down, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that is very important. Just to touch really quickly on that, or piggybacking on that. I had a friend, and unfortunately I had to sever ties as well, because it wasn't a healthy friendship. We were always bickering and arguing, and I'm like, we can't have a conversation without it going to the left, and I'm not here for that, right? I'm not trying to prove a point, but with social media, I remember telling her, she's like, oh, I was arguing with this dude because he said XYZ. And I'm like, well, why? And she was like, oh, well, because I had to make a point. And I'm like, well, why? Well, because he said, okay, but why? Why do you feel that there's a need for you to make a point? Was, first of all, someone that's a stranger, you don't know them, but what you're saying may not even be impactful enough to change how they feel about it. Like, so why are you expanding your energy on that? Right? Send that person, if you feel that that person needs to change their thoughts, send them some healing energy, excuse me. Send them some light, send them some love. Respect what they have to say and be okay with walking away from it. Everything does not have to be this. Everything does, and that's what I'm saying, what I practice and what I move through. We don't have to do that. People are entitled to how they feel and how they believe. I'm okay with that, you know? And like I said, I'm not here to change anybody's mind. But that's a very important part, is sometimes with that diet, you got to cut some stuff loose, right? You say, oh, that girl said this. Well, I want to respond. And it's like, okay, but why? Don't respond. Just say, okay. That's what I say now. Okay. And leave it at that.
And that may take some unlearning, right? Some unlearning of things, thinking about how we grew up, where if she say something to you, you better check her, because then you're going to look like a punk, right? So part of me is like realizing that, and if I do look like a punk, what do I care? Because she not controlling nothing over here, you know? So
Right.
starting to be like, I don't need to respond to everything, every piece of shade that's thrown at me. Or when people like to, when you know people are intentionally throwing shade at you, sometimes I used to get upset and want to throw shade back, but now I'm at this space where I'm like, dang, what trauma is trapped in you where you trying to project your insecurities onto me?
Oh,
Because
there you
the only
go.
reason why you focusing on me is because you got some stuff you don't want nobody to see on yours, right? And
Yeah.
so learning to just be like, smile or not say nothing, just let them have
Don't
that
say
moment.
anything.
And then, like you said, usually say a prayer for them. I hope they get that fixed, right? Because my thing is like, we all have things that we all have flaws. We all have things we need to grow from. But I'm not going to allow anyone to get me to react anymore. Like that emotional
Yeah.
intelligence has to like develop in you.
Exactly.
Okay, so I'm going to move us into our final set of questions. And
Okay.
the first one is statement is, share anything you are doing to educate others on free thinking.
Um, like I said, I don't do education. I'm say that again. I don't do education. Because I I don't believe in pushing what I believe in on anybody. I
Mhm.
don't. I think with being a free thinker is just that you are free to think how you want to think, and can't anybody take that away from you. But I'm always, like I said, I love engaging. If people have questions, sometimes, I mean, I have a couple of friends that I'm very shocked that they're actually kind of moving in the same wavelength as me. And something came up. Perfect example. I have a friend just recently, where I'm actually studying Reiki, is part of one of my healing modalities for others. And I was talking to her about this other training that I had just done, where I'm becoming a practitioner in quantum healing, hypnosis therapy. And I was like, oh, I was doing this and I'm doing that. She was like, well, why don't you do Reiki? And I was like, girl, what you know about Reiki? You know? And she was like, oh, I actually just took a level 1 course, you know, to be a practitioner. I'm practicing. And I was like, what? And I did not expect that, right? But sometimes, like I said, it'll be these little hints or these little jewels that are drop, and then you find that connectedness, and then you guys just start piggybacking off of it. So again, I don't want to convert anybody. I don't want to press what I believe or my belief systems on anyone. I am here to be a healer, regardless if you believe in it or not. This healing energy works for all. And if you're interested in it, contact me, look me up, or, just look up something within that field. Just Google it. Like I said, you'll be surprised how many practitioners are right where you are.
I should have framed that question better, because I realized when I said educate, that already goes to the colonizer's viewpoint. So I should have said, how do you plant seeds on free thinking? Because I see it. I see it in your Instagram posts when you are sharing some of those things. So next time I'll know not to say educate, say plant seeds. You're constantly doing that, and it's always you're pushing that positivity to whoever's on your timeline in all the spaces that you're at. So I appreciate you for that. Have you taken any action
Thank
to
you.
promote spiritual freedom?
I am currently working on that. So I think I do and I don't want to say for free. Usually it's just for my friends. It's unintentional. I think I've always had this way of being my friend's coach, or somebody they can call when they're in a bad spot, because they know you have the right words for that, or you can help me get out of the way. You helped me get out of so many situations. And I never realized that it was a gift that I had. Like I said, I didn't tap into that until later on, where I was like, oh, this is it. I've been trying to figure out what's my purpose, what I want to do. I know I want to help people, but how? Oh, I want to be a psychologist. And I'm like, oh, that's too clinical. I want to do this. Oh, that's not. And then I was like, I think it was, I'm gonna give him a shout out, Dom, a good friend of ours who was also on the show not too long ago. He had called me actually for something that he was going through, and he called me to help him work through it. And in turn, I let him know what I was going through. And just like you said, sometimes you get gems from people where it's unexpected, or you're like, oh, I took something. And I have always been afraid of taking the leap of faith, right? That has been my biggest downfall. And also another reason why I've stayed in the profession that I'm in for so long, because I finally have security. I don't want or need for anything. I live the lifestyle that I want. I own a home. I have a new car. I can travel. I can afford to do what I want to do. And there has been that thing in the back of my head about, and I'm being totally transparent with you all, but there's that thing that's been in the back of my head about taking that leap of faith, taking it to the next step. Or what about the things that I'm really into? It's going to sound wacky to some people. People are going to be like, she is crazy, and I have to take a step back to say, you know what? I don't care. I've always been within my friend circle, the one that people be like, that's just Saunyei, she gonna do some crazy stuff. That's just her. Oh girl, we didn't expect. Yeah, we knew that was gonna be you to do something like that. And I was like, you know what? There are going to be some people who are going to be attracted to it. There's going to be some people who I'm going to talk to, and even if they're not into it, it'll be that one moment, and they're like, dang, that really helped me. So I think I think I don't know. I get so passionate when I talk about it, and I want to share so much, but I'm working on it. I'm working on getting it off the ground. I am working on getting my business, like I'm working on trying to get a business license, but I'm taking a few courses. I have to get some clinical hours underneath me, or say practitioner hours underneath me. But just stay tuned. It is going to be coming. Follow me in the meantime on I'll say that page at the end of the session if people want to follow, but this is the time. This is the right time. I had to wait for some things to happen in my life, because I wouldn't have been ready for this journey like 2 years ago. I know for a fact I wouldn't have been ready. I thought I was ready, but like they say, things will be revealed to you when it's time.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
we as human beings, when we think we got it, it's like it needs to happen right now, right? And so this journey for me, this last 6 years, when I look back now, I can see the progress. But in it, I'm like, well, when is it coming? And when is this? And when is that? And I think part of it was, going back to school to work on my doctorate, and then saying, you know what, I'm going to step away from this executive director job. And everybody was like, you're crazy. What are you doing? Like and I'm like, that's what I'm feeling. That's what my spirit is saying to do. So I need to follow that, because if I stay here in the hood that I grew up in, which is great. I'm giving of myself. It's 24 hours. You're always, people need, everybody need, and which is good, but nobody's pouring back into you.
Yeah.
You hit a wall, right? And then you're like, okay, I don't have nothing else to give because one, I haven't really addressed what I went through in 2015. I just kept working. Focus on the work, focus on the work. Don't let that, when you focus on that, you don't really get to experience those feelings. So now they're trapped. And then
Right.
you react and you get triggered because you haven't processed that. And so
Yeah.
since 2019, doing some deep inner work, doing some, actually grieving what I lost in
Mhm.
2015, and now at a place where it's like I'm ready. I'm ready
Yeah.
for the impossible that people think is the impossible. I'm ready to walk in my purpose. I'm really trying to understand why I was born, what I was
Yeah.
born to do, because it's the reason. You're
Mm.
not here. We ain't born just to collect a bunch of stuff and have fun and then leave it to somebody and then pass away. It's something we're supposed to do before we leave this earth. And so now I'm in that space where I'm cultivating my life in a way that I want to make sure that when I'm prepared for what I'm supposed to do, I'm not rushing it, but I'm ready, right?
Right. And that's it. Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that. I feel the same way for sure.
And so the last and final question is, how do you advocate for the spiritual needs of the Black community?
Mm. I can't. Oh, gosh, this is a tough one because I don't like to say that I'm an advocate, just because with being, and I know I said this a few times. I don't sound like a broken record, but um, I believe that people, they have to step into their own purpose, right? I can't advocate for spirituality because it looks differently for us all. The one thing that I will advocate for is love.
Mm,
That is the one thing that I'm saying. I don't care what it is that you do. That is the one thing that will bring us together. That is the one thing that we all can have in common, regardless of what we practice and regardless of what we do. Um, I think moving forward with my business, I will try. No, let me step back. I don't like to say that. I will try. I will advocate for those who are questioning.
mhm, mhm.
Not for those who are certain. Because when you know what you know, and you know what you want to be, and you know what you believe in, like I said, I'm not here to change that. I don't want to do that. But there may be some people who were like me, coming up, that was just like, well, where do I fit in?
Mhm.
What do I do? How do I do it? Okay, well, those might be the people that I want to help to find their purpose, not to have them come on board with me. Because like I said, what I believe in, a lot of people probably won't, I'm not with that. And I'm okay with it, right? But sometimes people need a little guidance. But I think love is going to be the way of showing them, do whatever you want to do. If you want to be atheist, you want to be agnostic, if you want to be Muslim, if you want to be Buddhist, like Taoism, whatever. Believe in what you want to believe in, but move through love. Do it all through love.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
So thank you, Saunyei, for a really great topic and discussion today. You got my brain going right now, so I know we have to have a follow up show so I can ask more questions. But I want
Yeah.
to like some of the pearls that I heard you say, and so I think
Mhm.
we must remember who we are, and study and learn our roots to find out who each of us is as individuals. I think one, starting out, where do we come from? Who are we? Like doing that study is, and you got Google, YouTube, and all the rest of the resources that's out there. Two, learn to ask
Mhm.
learn to ask questions about everything. Question
Mhm.
everything. Like just because this has always been, why has it always been?
Right.
Number three, learn how to respond and not react in situations.
Yeah.
Four, assess your life and rid it of the things that are hindering your progress. So there are a lot
Mhm.
of things that are hindering us from one, walking in our purpose, but two, even from getting ahead in life. So I think really assessing what needs to go. And then the last one that I think is the most important is advocate for love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm here. I am 100% here for it. And that is going to be my mission until I depart this plane. I'm going to be pushing love for sure. Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank you again for coming on and sharing your experience. Talking about a conversation that could be difficult sometimes, especially because we all believe what we believe, but glad that you are open and open
Yeah.
to sharing that with others. If there's one last piece of advice or tip that you would like to share with the viewers, the last voice that they hear will be yours.
All right. Well, thank you for all of that. I would just like to say for all of you who are intrigued by this conversation, who may say, I didn't like that. I challenge all of you to just ask yourselves why. Just ask yourself why. Even if you're intrigued, why are you intrigued? What about this conversation or this topic, this dialogue between us intrigued you? And if it hit a string, a chord, and you were not happy with it or made you feel some kind of way, why? Right? And this falls back into always asking questions, because the answer to your why is not going to be for me.
Mhm.
It's going to be for you. It's going to be for you. And that's about that growth. That's about that constant evolution, right? That's about that transcendence. You have to grow. You have to keep asking questions. And the questions don't stop until you are old and gray and ready to roll over into your grave. Ask questions, right? Yeah, and then too, if you all will like to follow my page, I'm still working on my business. So hopefully by the next time that we connect, Reek, I will have my website and my practices up for people to find me for any work that they're looking for. But in the meantime, you can find me at Uncaged Thoughts on Instagram. That's UNCAGED.THOUGHTS. And that's Uncaged Thoughts. You'll see my face. You'll know it's me. I don't have like a logo or anything, but I do try to do a dose of positivity, motivating, inspirational kind of quotes, maybe some questions, and a little bit about me. Sometimes there's humor in there as well. But I always stand in my truth. I speak my truth. I stand in my truth. I live by it. So look me up if you want to stay connected. Otherwise, blessings to you all. Thank you for having me, Rika. I appreciate this.
Thank you.